wabarakatuh. I just quickly wanted to address a couple of things pertaining to this new movie, this new documentary that was released by Matt Walsh. The documentary is called What is a Woman? It is an important documentary, and I urge everyone to give it a go, to watch it. I urge families to watch this documentary sitting together. The documentary again is called What is a Woman by Matt Walsh. And so I really just quickly wanted to talk about this in a live stream. I intend to make a podcast on this documentary, particularly the back and forth between Professor Dave from the channel Professor Dave Explains and Matt Walsh. And I will, inshallah, in near future make a podcast talking in somewhat in detail about some of these matters. I've been wanting to do a podcast about these issues for a long time now. But as you know, my educational content requires a lot of research, requires a lot of reading, studying, making lots of notes. And so I really wanted to be an educational podcast. And so I'm doing my research about it, about all of this, about all of these subjects. And I want to present you guys with some references, with a lot of academic content. And I just don't want to talk about these things just like that. That I'm doing right now. I mean, I'm just talking about the documentary just like that right now. And I want to talk about a couple of things about this documentary. So, as we know, Matt Walsh has taken a staunch stand vis-a-vis against the woke movement, and especially against this idea of gender fluidity and things that are pertaining to that are related to this narrative. And in that sense, we can call him belonging to the camp of Jordan B. Peterson. And in this documentary, What is a Woman?, he does interview Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. There is a segment in which Dr. Jordan B. Peterson also appears. What is this whole thing? What is all of this? What are the things that are propagated in this narrative, the narrative of LGBTQ plus, the narrative of woke movement, and most importantly, the narrative of gender fluidity? Amongst many other things, one of the primary things that we need to address, that we need to sit down in a Muslim household and talk to our families about, is this whole idea about gender fluidity. And what does this idea mean for a lay person, for a lay parent, for a lay student, for any of us, for the lay people who are not academics, who are not psychiatrists, let's say, who are not even very well read? It simply means that there is this idea out there that whomsoever you identify as in genders, you are that gender, and everyone else should accept that. And so if one day I wake up and I decide that I want to be addressed as a woman, that I'm a woman, that I want to dress as woman and want to be addressed as woman, I can do that. This whole thing hinges its logical and rational foundations, bases its rational foundations on the idea, on the principle of personal freedom of choice and the right of every single human being to pleasure. Somebody who's pleased by doing something, he or she, they should be allowed to do it. That's their personal freedom, right? But the problem arises when you are allowing minors to decide based upon their personal feelings which gender they want to belong to. So, irrespective of their biological sex, and I'll come to the difference between sex and gender in a minute, but irrespective of the reality, the biological reality, which sex they belong to, irrespective of that, they can identify with any gender, and they are allowed to do so. Not only that, but there are clinics, there are medical establishments who will actually administer the sex changing drugs based on a minor's idea of himself or herself and which gender he or she wants to identify with. This is where the real problem comes in. And so Matt Walsh asks a simple question to these woke propagandists. He asks, what is a woman? And nobody is really able to answer this question because it is really a social construct for them. Gender for them is a social construct. It is a social construct as opposed to the biological construct of sex. It is a social construct. So the idea of gender is applied to words, to things. So, for example, chair is feminine now, right? And for example, pen is male, normally, usually speaking. In Arabic, we have this concept of tazkir and ta'nith. And so there are dama'ir, there are different pronouns that are specific to male or female. And so it is a construct. It is a social construct. It is a linguistic construct as opposed to a biological construct. So you can be of one sex, but then you can choose to identify with the opposite gender. So you can be a man, but if you identify as a woman, you're a woman. This is what is said by the woke movement, by the current proponents of LGBTQ and woke movement. So a couple of things that we need to understand. Number one, there's a difference between sex and gender, like I just said. Sex is a biological construct. So it is biologically determined. It is your reality, physical reality. It is the external reality. You're either born with male genitalia or female genitalia. You either have predominantly male chromosomes or dominant female chromosomes. And so on and so forth. Genetic makeup, chromosomes, chromosomal identity. You can call it a chromosomal definition. Gender has more to do with language, with society, with the idea of being a man or a woman. And it is not just gender roles. The gender itself is a social construct, and I'll come to this in a minute. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the liberalists and these woke movement propagandists and proponents, what they've been saying and what they've been trying to do is that they've been trying to push a false narrative, a false idea, a pseudo-scientific idea, a fringe idea that gender is a neurobiological reality. And Professor Dave from Professor Dave Explains, I'm a huge fan of his channel, by the way. Don't get me wrong, but dishonesty is dishonesty. I mean, he's an academic, I'm an academic, of course. I'm not at his level of academia because he's the privileged white man. I don't have the access to Harvard or those universities that he has had access to. He is the privileged white man, and so he has that white man's privilege. But I am an academic. I'm involved in advanced degrees here. I'm involved in PhD. I am internationally published researcher. So I'm an academic too, and so there is academic dishonesty there. Professor Dave, in his video, in which he addresses Matt Walsh's rebuttal, so called, in which Matt Walsh says that Professor Davis cancelled. He addresses that video, he's made a video um, addressing that rebuttal, in which he reiterates that gender is a neurobiological reality, it's a neurobiological construct, which is totally academically false. All the papers that he cites, I have read most of these papers. Uh, Maybe I haven't read one or two of those, but I've read most of these papers. No scientist has yet been able to determine with 100% certainty what role genes play in gender identity or in sexual orientation. So, what is a neurobiological reality is that feelings are neurobiological. That's a neurobiological fact, that's a neurobiological construct, that's a neurobiological reality, that it is in our mind, it is in our brain, the chemicals that are released when we think about certain things in a certain way, when we talk about certain things a certain way, when we feel about certain things in a certain way. Obviously, that's in our brain, and that affects our makeup and our personality traits, the neurobiology, the neural pathways and whatnot. That is a neurobiological fact. Our feelings and the way they shape and form our personality. Nobody is denying that. Nobody is saying otherwise. But to say that the gender is a neurobiological reality, that is far from truth. That is far from truth. Just because you have a certain type of feelings, that is not a biological reality. Just because you have certain chemicals that are released in your brain in a certain way, or when you think about a certain thing, that does not make it a reality in the external, right? So that's a form of dishonesty that is being pushed by the liberalists, by peoples of these sort, by people of these sort. All professors, at least the ones I know about when I have researched and I have looked into it, professors of gender studies, professors of humanities, professors who are involved in these studies, they all accept and they all academically say and academically and critically and analytically put forward the idea that gender is a social construct. It is not a biological construct. It is not a neurobiological construct. And so that is something that we need to be very wary of. There are scientific journal articles that say that it has something to do with that it has something to do with the genes, but no peer-reviewed proper journal article can say as of yet and can propose that with 100% certainty that genes have something to do with it, or how much genes have something to do with gender identity or with sexual identity, homosexual and lesbian or heterosexual behavior. And so that's the first thing that I wanted to address. So please make this very unambiguous in your mind. Please make this clear in your mind. Gender is a social construct. It's not a biological construct. It is not a neurobiological construct. Feelings are neurobiological. Sure, nobody disagrees with that. But just because you have feelings of certain manner, you have certain feelings in your brain, you have certain feelings in your heart and in your brain, does not make those feelings reality in external world. That's the whole point. The external reality is always chromosomal. It's always going to be the physical reality, the biological reality, right? So you are either a man or a woman. It's pretty much binary, the reality out there. There are exceptions, but we all know, every academic knows that the exceptions are exceptions. And so you can't make rules based on exceptions. So yeah, so that's that. Another thing is that when you're talking about the whole issue about gender fluidity and this idea that if you want to be identified as a man or a woman, you should have every right to. This is a narrative, right? This is the West's narrative. And Mary Grossman, in the documentary What is a Woman, rightly points out that this whole thing was triggered by Kinsley and later on John Money. And so if you look into these two figures, these two psychosociologists or psychologists, you'll get to know that this is a certain type of a narrative that is their narrative. And sure, it is pushed by the West. They are a superpower, and it is included in their New World Order. Many of the narratives are. The whole narrative of war on terror, the whole narrative of capitalist dominance. There are certain narratives that are a part of the New World Order, and this is one of those narratives. And so just because it is a narrative of the West, just because it is a narrative of America, they want to push it, doesn't make it true. Many students that I talk to, they take it as a fact. How is this a fact? This is just one of the narratives. And there are counter narratives. For example, look at videos by Jordan B. Peterson, by Matt Walsh, by Joe Rogan. So these are narratives out there, right? You can choose between the two narratives, but we will have to sit down and talk about certain tangents, certain anchor points in each of these narratives. So the main issue here is, can someone be allowed to base the idea of their external reality on their internal reality, on what is going on in their mind? Can you do that? Should that be the way to go? That is the main anchor point of this whole debate, of this whole discussion. So I, as a human being, can feel pretty much whatever I want to feel, right? I can be sad, I can be happy. Some things make me happy, some things make me sad. There are things that satisfy me on a certain level. There are things that dissatisfy me on a certain level. Big deal. That's who I am as a human being. But can I change the external reality based on the way I feel? That is the main anchor point of this whole debate. Should I be allowed to in the first place? It has nothing to do with personal freedom. You are free to do whatever you want to. Even Islam does not take away your individual and personal freedom. It just clear this in your mind. This is clear cut. Islam never says, and Islam doesn't say that you have to take away somebody's personal freedom or personal choices. In fact, the personal choices are what we are judged upon, right? So murderers are murderers. They commit murder because Allah has allowed them to choose between the right and the wrong. وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةِ. We have shown human beings right and wrong. They are free to choose between the two, and that's what they're going to be judged upon. So we are not taking away anyone's personal freedom, anyone's personal choice. We're not saying that. All we're saying is that if you're allowed to be able to change the external reality based on the internal reality, wouldn't that be a dangerous thing? That's where we're coming from, primarily. And that's what the whole debate is really about. A man feels like a woman, okay, but the external reality is that he is a man. The biological reality is that he is a man. So shouldn't he try? What is the best possible course for this human being? And we can only propose. Again, we're not shoving any of this down anyone's throat, unlike what the West is doing. They're shoving down everybody's throat this idea that they should go through hormone therapy and whatnot and sex change and whatnot. We're not shoving this down through anyone's throat. We're just saying, wouldn't it be better for this person to get some counsel? Maybe try and understand his or her situation for that matter. Because the external reality cannot really change based on your personal reality, based on your internal reality, how you feel. So, and yeah, I understand that sometimes some of these people who are proponents of this type of narrative, they throw in non sequiturs like, if I feel like I'm a penguin, then you'll have to address me as a penguin, so I'm a penguin. Yeah, that's a non sequitur. I understand that. However, you are making a mistake. People like Professor Dave and others, the liberalists, they're making the mistake of saying that gender is a biological reality. It is a neurochemical reality. It's not that either. So both sides are, I guess, somewhat mistaken in this. I think the best approach to this matter is that you understand that the feelings and the reality are two different things. It's as simple as that. So we agree that feelings are a biological phenomenon. But that neurobiological phenomenon cannot alter the biological external reality. That cannot happen. That is illogical. That is impossible. The issue of transgenders, that's a very complex issue, but biological transgenders are very few. They're really exceptions, right? It's a biological disorder. The transgenders that we're talking about nowadays, especially in Pakistan, they fall under this category of gender fluidity. So mostly they are men, but they identify as women. Their genitalia is that of a man. Their biological construct is that of a man. Most of them, 99% of them, are fully functional men who can have, who can do and who can experience all things that men can do and experience, sexually speaking. Erections and orgasms and whatnot, ejaculation. Maybe they're lacking in their seminal fluid strength. Maybe they're lacking in spermatozoa. But that's a different issue. That's really a different issue. But they identify as women. And so all we are saying is, should their personal feelings trump the external reality? Should that be possible? That's the only question we're asking. Now, to address the elephant in the room, brutality, any sort of brutality against any of these people is absolutely prohibited in Islam. You cannot kill someone, period, except for fasad fil ard. That is made very clear in the Quran and the Hadith. We are never saying, as Muslims, we never say that kill them or do anything against them or harm them. That's an absolute no-no. Anybody who tries to portray Islam in that light is actually a propagandist, and a propagandist of the worst kind. Islam never takes away your personal freedom, never takes away your personal human rights, your basic human rights. Islam does not say that if you are a homosexual, you should be killed. Yes, there are ahadith in which it is proposed that you kill these people in an Islamic society if they're doing it in front of the public. But again, those are all matters of law and jurisprudence if you have Sharia in a country. Generally speaking, if you don't have Sharia in a country, you cannot execute the Sharia law, period. Penalty, had, the penalty for adultery is also death in Islam. But Can you really administer that in today's world where you don't have Sharia law in any country, where you don't have Islamic law in any country, where you don't have Khilafah in any country today? So Islam does not say that you, even with those hudud, even with those law and jurisprudence matters, that's a matter for the qadi, that's a matter for the court. You cannot take that into your own hands. You can't take law in your own hand, according to Islam. So nobody is saying anybody should be killed, period. Just get that through your thick skulls, just get that through your thick skulls. Nobody is saying that. Stop portraying Islam in that light. If you are portraying Islam in that light, you are a propagandist. We are all for freedom of choice. We're all for freedom of expression. We're all for freedom of ideas. We're all about freedom of choices, personal pleasures, whatnot, man. Go wild. Do whatever you want. Really. Do whatever you want, pretty much. That's not a problem. The problem is when you're trying to shove your ideology down our throats. You have basic human rights, you have a right to choose, we have a right to choose, So your right to choice should not trump my right to choose something other than what you think should be chosen, right? It's just about that. This was just a quick live cast. I don't know if I was able to make sense of things for you guys. Maybe you guys understood something from this. Maybe you guys got more confused by this quick live cast. I will, inshallah, make a podcast about all of this. Inshallah, I intend to. So keep watching the channel, subscribe, gives it the video a thumbs up. It helps me to bring more content to you. And inshallah, see you guys very soon with a video on this very fundamental and important question. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.